What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. I'm Haley, and this is another true crime video. So today we are talking about an unsolved disappearance that will 100% leave you with more questions than answers, but I could not believe that I hadn't heard this story and think it's important to get it out there because even though it's been 16 years, that doesn't mean that this can't be solved. So let's just get into it. Today, we are talking about the disappearance of Jennifer Kesse. And I've gotten a ton of requests to cover her case on my TikTok. And so I finally looked it up. And like I said, I could not believe that I hadn't heard her story before, and I just had to share it. Jennifer Joyce Kesse was born on May 20th, 1981 to Joyce and Drew Kesse. Jennifer graduated from high school and went on to study at the University of Central Florida. In 2003, she graduated from UCF with a degree in finance, and after that, she began working as a finance manager at Central Florida Investments timeshare company. In 2006, Jennifer had recently purchased her first home, a condominium in a complex in Orlando. She was also a year into a long-distance relationship with her boyfriend, Rob Allen. Rob lived about 3 hours away in Fort Lauderdale, but they would see each other every weekend. And actually, the weekend before Jennifer disappeared, her and Rob went on a weekend getaway to St. Croix USVI. And by all accounts, Jennifer was an extremely happy, successful, talented, smart person. On the morning of January 23rd, 2006, the Monday after she got back from her trip, Jennifer called her mom Joyce on her way into work to tell her all of the details about her trip. And her mom Joyce described that she was on a cloud that morning. Jennifer left work at about 6 p.m. and on her way home called her dad, was chatting with him, and, by all accounts, was happy and in a great mood. At around 10 p.m., Jennifer called her boyfriend Rob to say goodnight before she went to bed. The next day, so this was January 24th, Rob was expecting either a text or call from Jennifer in the morning because every morning she would message him while she was, on her way to work. When he received no message from her, he began trying to contact her, but none of his texts were going answered and all of his calls were going straight to voicemail. And Jennifer didn't show up at work that morning and her coworkers became pretty concerned. It wasn't like her to just not show up without calling, and she missed a pretty big meeting that morning, so her coworkers definitely thought that something was up. At around 11 a.m., her employer called her parents to notify them that Jennifer hadn't been heard from and hadn't shown up to work, and they pretty much immediately knew something was wrong. So along with Jennifer's brother Logan, they got in the car and began driving to Orlando. When they got to Jennifer's condo about 3.5 hours later, they found that she had clearly been there that morning and had gotten ready for work. In the bathroom, they found a damp towel. They found that there was water in the shower, suggesting that she had showered that morning before work. They also found pajamas on the floor and makeup on the bathroom counter. Jennifer's mother also noted that a pair of heels that she was particularly excited about wearing were missing from her closet. Also missing from the home were Jennifer's purse, phone, and keys. And her parents also noticed that Jennifer's car was not outside of the condo, so it looked like she had left for work. Her family immediately believed that this all pointed to Jennifer being missing, so they called the police to report her missing, but at first the police didn't take any report because she's an adult and they believe she could have left on her own volition. But eventually, the police department did send a detective to Jennifer's home, and that detective found no sign of forced entry, and this led police to initially believe that she had been abducted at some point between leaving her condo and getting to her car. So searches for Jennifer began, but nothing was found until 2 days later on January 26th when they found her car. At 8:10 a.m., Jennifer's black black 2004 Chevrolet Malibu was found parked at another apartment complex about a mile away from her home. A tenant of a nearby complex had seen Jennifer's car being shared on the news and noticed that it looked very similar to a car that had been sitting abandoned outside of their apartment for the last few days. They contacted police, and when police got there, they were able to identify it as Jennifer's car. Inside of Jennifer's car, police found several valuables, indicating to them that robbery was not the motive here. The things missing from her car were her cell phone, her iPod, her keys, her briefcase, and the clothes that she had been wearing that day. And of course, Jennifer. There was pretty much no forensic evidence found in the car. They did find one latent print and a small DNA fiber, but investigators pretty much believe that the car had been wiped down. Now, there were security cameras at the apartment complex, and they were able to see somebody driving the car into the lot, dropping it off, and walking away. So this was at about 12 p.m. on January 24th, the day that Jennifer disappeared. But unfortunately, these cameras were not a continuous feed, and they would basically capture an image every 3 seconds. The images were very grainy, as you can see, and the subject was pretty much completely obscured by the fence for every image that they were in. So the images that the camera captured every 3 seconds happened to get the person when they were behind one of the fence posts, one of the gate posts, so nobody could identify them. No family or friends recognized the stature of this person as either being Jennifer or not being Jennifer. So they weren't able to confirm or deny that the person in the image was Jennifer. The police even called in the FBI to look at the images, and they weren't really able to determine much. They weren't able to determine if the person was male or female. They were only able to say that the person in the image was between 5'3" and 5'5". Investigators even had NASA enhance the image, but that also led nowhere, and they couldn't really get any other discernible clues from it. I think it is relatively widely believed that the person in this image is not Jennifer and is a person of interest in her disappearance. One journalist even called this person the luckiest person of interest ever. So a search dog was able to track a scent from Jennifer's car back to her condo complex. This led investigators to believe that the suspect had abandoned Jennifer's car and had returned to the condo complex after abandoning it. But police had no real leads. They questioned her family, her boyfriend, and even her ex-boyfriend, who was apparently recently upset about the fact that him and Jennifer broke up and that he wanted to get back together with her, but she didn't. But they were able to conclude that he was not involved, the family wasn't involved, and neither was her current boyfriend, Rob Allen, because he had a solid alibi. Another investigative lead that police began to look into was construction workers that were on site at her condominium complex's expansion project. Jennifer had apparently told family members on several occasions that these construction workers were catcalling her, whistling at her, and harassing her, and she had spoke about this several times. So investigators did look into them, but they weren't really able to interrogate many of them because of the language barrier. And no other leads really pointed to these construction workers, so that went nowhere. Jennifer's work computer was taken in for forensic analysis, and police decided to question her manager. Allegedly, she had turned down his advances because she was against workplace relationships, and so investigators looked into if this person possibly could have been angry and done something to Jennifer, but he was also eventually cleared. In May 2007, over a year after Jennifer's disappearance, her company that she worked at offered a $1 million reward for any information leading to her whereabouts. And this had a deadline of July 4th. And between May and July, nobody came forward with any information, and the reward was never claimed. The Central Florida Crime Line were able to offer an ongoing $5,000 reward for any information leading to her whereabouts. But despite the case receiving state and national press attention, no real leads ever came in. Additionally, police were able to determine that Jennifer's cell phone had been turned off because they were not able to ping its location, and her credit and bank cards have never been touched. Jennifer's case pretty much went cold. About 3 years after Jennifer disappeared, Detective Joel Wright, who was the lead investigator on the case, decided to take a fresh look at the files. He began interviewing people that were involved, and he spoke with a former housekeeper that worked at the condo complex. She told him that the person in the security camera footage resembled a maintenance worker at the complex, a man identified as Chino. He was apparently known for Chino because of his hair, clothing, and the way he walked. And he used to live in another building at Jennifer's condo complex and worked as a maintenance worker there. And he was actually one of the workers doing repairs at Jennifer's condo the week before she disappeared. Wright also was able to find an anonymous crime line tip that was reported the first week after Jennifer went missing that suggested that Chino may have been involved. So on March 18th, 2009, Detective Wright interviewed Chino in prison where he was serving time for a separate statutory rape charge. Chino told him that while he worked in Jennifer's condo, everything seemed normal and that he had no involvement in her disappearance. And he apparently passed a polygraph test, so that lead went cold. In 2016, 10 years after Jennifer disappeared, she was legally declared dead by the state of Florida. But to this day, she is still considered missing and endangered by both the Orlando Police Department and the FBI. What is believed is that Jennifer got ready for work that morning as was normal and was abducted at some point after she left her condo. In 2008, the Florida House of Representatives unanimously passed Senate Bill 502, or the Jennifer Kesse and Tiffany Sessions Missing Persons Act. And this was meant to reform how missing persons cases were handled in the state of Florida. In 2018, the Kesse family actually sued the Orlando Police Department for a copy of Jennifer's case files. They finally settled, and in March 2019, they were given more than 16,000 pages of documents and 67 hours of video and audio tape related to Jennifer's case. And under this settlement, the Orlando Police Department would no longer be leading the investigation, and it would be officially passed off to the FBI. Jennifer is still on the FBI's most wanted missing persons list, and investigators say that they continue to take in and follow up on any tips. The Kesse family hired a private investigator named Michael Toretta, and he found out that about 10 months after Jennifer disappeared, a person was seen dumping a rolled up piece of carpet into a lake not far from where Jennifer had lived. This was especially interesting because apparently the day that Jennifer went missing, carpet was being installed at the condo across from hers. In November 2019, local police led a dive team search of the lake. After 2 days of searching, though, they were not able to find anything. But Toretta's theory is that up to 10 construction workers were living in an empty apartment across from Jennifer's condo, and that one or more of them had abducted Jennifer. The Kesses are still extremely dedicated to finding out what happened to their daughter. Now that they have the case file in their possession, they are more determined than ever to find out what happened to her. January 24th, 2022 was the 16th anniversary of Jennifer's disappearance. But just because it's been 16 years does not mean that there will never be answers. There's a Facebook group called Find Jennifer Kesse where her family updates with any new information. And if you have any information about her disappearance, you are asked to contact her family through the Facebook group. And that is the super mysterious disappearance of Jennifer Kesse. Many people believe that Jennifer was a victim of human trafficking, which is a huge problem in the world we live in today. Although there is no direct evidence of this, a lot of people believe that to be the case because how did she just disappear into thin air? But to this day, she is still missing and her case is unsolved. There's just not a ton of information out there on this case because the investigation just didn't go very far. They didn't find much. But I truly believe there is still hope for answers and for her family to one day have closure. And that's why I really wanted to share this case with you all today. Please be sure to leave a thumbs up on this video and comment. That way it'll get pushed out to more people and more people can hear Jennifer's story. And if you want to see more videos like this from me, hit that red subscribe button and I will see you guys in the next one.